I'm Lucy.
And I'm Jennifer.
You're listening to Everything I Know About.
Each week, we share everything we know about a new topic, equipped with some internet research and a little too much exposure to pop culture. Hey, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Some housekeeping before we get started. Our next episode is going to be our last episode before we take a little 2-month hiatus. We are working really hard on getting Pagebound's app out, and we're also doing some summer traveling. My brother is getting married this summer. He's having 2 weddings, one in Nashville and one in Albania. So I will be doing some international traveling. Lucy, you have your annual camping trip, right?
Yeah, it sounds so unglamorous in comparison, but yes, I will do my annual get in a car with my dog and my husband and go camping.
That sounds so wholesome and wonderful.
It is. I love it.
Yes. So between our travel plans and work picking up, we want to, not just put out half-assed episodes. We'll be back in 2 months.
Yeah, thanks everybody for your understanding, and we hope that you'll be back with us in August when we're back. So you've got today's episode and then one more coming out, and then we'll be back mid-August.
Today, we are diving into Catholicism and Papa Americano. We have an American Pope. I'm wearing my Notre Dame sweatshirt for the occasion. So one thing about me, I was heavily educated in the Catholic Church. I attended Catholic school from 8th grade all the way up through college. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school. I went to Notre Dame, which is like the Catholic university here in the States. So I am steeped in the Catholic education. I myself do not identify as Catholic and have not since before I started attending Catholic school. It's a purely educational thing. I always lived in areas that had pretty subpar public schools, so I had to go to private school, which was Catholic. It was not a religious thing for me, but one perk, I know a lot about the religion now. So,
were you raised Catholic? Did you grow up when you were younger going to church?
Yes. My parents probably would identify themselves as Catholic or at least Christian. My grandparents were very religious. They went to church every week. So like when we would visit them, we would go. We always went for like Christmas and Easter and that kind of stuff. And I did like Bible study during the summer, like you go to Bible camp, I definitely did that growing up. But then around like 11, 12-ish, I don't know, I kind of decided for myself I was not religious and I didn't want to get confirmed, which you do when you're like 13. And my parents were, shout out to them, they were very cool about that and did not force me to get confirmed. So I left.
Okay, so if you didn't get confirmed, that was your official. Did they think of that as, okay, you're no longer Catholic from the church's perspective?
That's a good question. I don't think I could get married in the Catholic Church.
Okay.
I think you have to be confirmed to get married in the Catholic Church. I mean, I'm baptized.
Yeah.
So I can take communion. Like I did my first Holy Communion, so I can go up and like take the body and blood of Christ and all that at church if I wanted to. So I think I technically am still Catholic in the eyes of the church. I'm just not an adult. It's kind of like your bar mitzvah.
Okay.
I
mean, I don't really know since I'm not religious at all, but okay. I know vaguely.
That was my like religious upbringing. What was your religious upbringing, if at all?
There was no religion in my upbringing. Yeah. I mean, my parents grew up during the communist revolution, so religion was not a thing. Like the communist government was not supportive of it. When my parents came to the US, they both were not religious. Obviously, growing up in America, where it's primarily a Christian society, like I knew that people went to church on Sundays, but I had no concept of going to church. In fact, I went to Chinese school every Sunday. That was like the alternative that I was doing. But I've heard of Bible camp or the after school Bible study type stuff. And I like knew people growing up who went to those. The area I grew up in was mostly Christian, I would say. And then now I'm married to Avery. Avery's Jewish. So I am like a little bit more familiar now. He like studied Hebrew and had a bat mitzvah. As of now, we are, as a household, we're not religious. Avery doesn't practice. Like we try to celebrate Hanukkah, but it's kind of in the same way that we celebrate Christmas, which is just not with any true religious meaning behind it, but more just for like the cultural tradition.
Cute. Yeah. So it was funny when Lucy and I were chatting about what we wanted to do for this episode. I was like, well, the big thing going on right now is the Pope. And she was like, I know nothing about Catholicism or Christianity. And so I started asking her what she knew and didn't know. And I was so surprised because to me, it just is like second nature. I think because I've been steeped in it for so long. I'm like, oh, everybody knows this stuff. But then I realized talking to you that like not everybody knows this stuff.
Yeah.
Which was a revelation to me.
Yeah, it's funny because I do feel like the Bible is kind of canon in Western literature, and I studied English. And, even in high school and everything, I was a big reader, still am. And I remember reading like, the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons or Shakespeare even and being like, wow, I feel like I'm missing a lot of references since I don't really know anything about religion or the Bible. And so I
Mhm.
felt like sometimes in class people would reference religious sayings or biblical sayings. And I'm like, I have no, like I was never able to make those kind of connections. And so I'm very interested. It definitely has been a missing piece of knowledge, but I guess to me it's definitely more of like an interesting artifact or like knowledge rather than anything that speaks to me from like a religious or belief standpoint.
Yeah, totally. No, I'm in the same boat as you. I think like I'm just interested in religion in general because I'm like spiritual and kind of woo-woo like that. And I think each religion has something to say about spirituality. And also just from like the historical standpoint, like you just pointed out, I love history. I'm a huge history buff. And when you go traveling in Europe specifically, you need to have that background religious knowledge to be able to appreciate something like St. Peter's Basilica or all of the cathedrals. So I also find it very, very interesting from a historical perspective. And I do not want to go on like a deep dive of theology here. Like, that's not the point. We're not going to be doing some like boring episode about Father, Son, Holy Spirit here. I think my goal is to just give an overview of the history of Christianity and how Catholicism and Christianity split, how they are the same, how they are different. And then, Lucy, you're going to take us more into modern day
Yeah.
papal Vatican stuff. Yeah.
Well, I was very interested in like how the Vatican runs as an organization.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know a ton about it prior to doing research for this episode. I visited twice actually, but probably like without really understanding a lot of the significance. And it's always been fascinating. I think probably heavily influenced by the fact that I read the Da Vinci Code when I was in high school, that I was like, whoa, there's some secretive shit happening here.
Yes.
So I was very curious, just how does this organization run? How much power does it actually have? How does it make money? What does it do with that money?
Yeah. All right. So, like I said, I'm like a little bit too steeped in this to know what's obvious knowledge and what is not. So, can you give me an overview of what you know about Catholicism and Christianity? Like, if I were to ask you, what do Christians believe?
All right, sure, sure. Okay, so they believe there's God, they believe in heaven and hell. I think depending on what form of Christianity, you have like different rules for your leaders, right? So like I think some church leaders are allowed to marry, have families, some have to stay totally celibate. I'm thinking about Fleabag right now.
Yeah. Sexy priest.
Yeah, sexy priest. I have visited many churches when traveling, and so I know there's like beautiful art and various saints that are often depicted in the art, and I think there's patron saints of certain virtues. Most of this is honestly from like watching movies and being exposed just in daily life.
Well, that's pretty good. The core thing is just there's one God, monotheistic, same God as Islam and Judaism. And where Catholicism or Christianity diverges is we have Jesus. And Jesus is not a prophet like he is in Islam and Judaism. He's literally God. And that is the only thing that separates, truly, truly separates the religions.
But there's also the Holy Ghost. What's the Holy Ghost?
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so this is kind of where also Catholicism splits off from Christianity and Protestantism. So just to go back a little bit here, there only used to be Catholicism. Catholicism is the OG Christianity, the one started by Jesus, let's say. And Catholics believe that there's the Holy Trinity. So there is the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and they are three, let's call them iterations of one unified God. So yes, Jesus is the Son of God, but he also is God. And then the Holy Spirit, honestly, I don't know how that differs from big G God, but it is different somehow, but they all three are unified in what's called the Holy Trinity. And you'll have different offshoots, like some evangelicals, some Protestants who have different flavors of who Jesus is. Some will say that like he is not literally God. He is a second God almost. Like Jesus is not the same entity as big G God. Some don't really have the concept of the Holy Spirit, but anyway, that is what the Holy Trinity is.
Interesting.
It is considered one of the foundational mysteries. The church has what they call mysteries of faith. They're like rules and belief systems that they can't explain. It makes no sense, but you have to believe in it. And it's a mystery of faith at that point. And the Trinity is a mystery of faith.
Wow, how convenient.
It defies logic. I know. Yeah, very convenient. That's one of the reasons I did not get confirmed. I was like, I don't buy that.
I have heard of the Holy Ghost because in teenage rom-coms, the teachers are always like, leave room for the Holy Ghost when the little teenagers are dancing. But I didn't realize she was like, leave room for God. Like, I was like, a ghost is what I was picturing.
Hilarious. Yes. So, like I was saying, Catholicism is the OG Christianity. It became the official religion of the Roman Empire in 313 after Constantine converted on his deathbed. That was when Christianity actually became legal as well in the Roman Empire. Up until then, there was mass persecution of Christians. St. Peter was executed upside down by Nero in 64 AD. And it was at the site of his death that the first basilica was erected. And that's where St. Peter's Basilica resides today. I think that's so cool that we can still visit the site that somebody died at and was a pilgrimage site from 64,
Yeah.
year 64. That's so wild to me. The church gets big, becomes law of the land. We enter the Dark Ages. The church becomes extremely authoritarian and extremely wealthy. And they get very wealthy, not only through corruption with the different governments within Europe, but also through selling spiritual shit. So they're selling tickets to heaven. They're selling fast passes out of purgatory. They're selling, you kill somebody, just pay me a few bucks and I'll give you a little sign of the cross and you're good to go. Like, corruption left and right. This leads to Martin Luther, who was a priest, getting super fed up with all of this. And he puts out his famous 95 grievances, tacks it on a door, and is basically like, the church has strayed so far from God. These rules are insane. And he starts Protestantism. This is the Protestant Reformation. And that's where we get into Henry VIII, lots of schisms within the church, lots of subsequent wars and the tumult of history from there. And actually, our country sprouts from this. So now we have dozens and dozens of different types of Christianity.
In the US, what is the most common?
That is a good question. I don't know. I know Catholic is not.
Protestantism is the largest branch of Christianity in the US. 48.9% of the population, according to Google.
That's where we get the wasps from.
Catholicism is only 22.7%.
Yeah, it's always crazy to me how I don't think Protestants and Catholics really believe all of that differently, but the hatred between the two groups is insane. I was just recently reading an article about Northern Ireland and Belfast. To this day, there's still animosity between the Catholics and the Protestants. So I don't know, I find that completely wild because you really look at the underlying belief systems and how they're different. Really, it's Catholics still worship saints. They believe that Mary is holy. She was a virgin. She's holy. They have iconography of saints. So that's where you the necklaces and the pretty pictures and stuff. And Protestants don't do any of that. It's considered idolatry to have images of saints. So at the base, it's really, really minor stuff. But yeah, it has caused an insane amount of bloodshed over the centuries, which is really sad. All right. So our very first pope was St. Peter, the one that got crucified at St. Peter's Square. And the legacy has gone on all the way until today. We have the actual site of Vatican St. Peter's Basilica, built in 313. And this is not the actual basilica that's there today. That was built later in the 1600s, designed by Michelangelo. We get the Sistine Chapel, which is painted by Michelangelo. And Vatican does not become its own sovereign entity until 1929 with the Lateran Acts, but it is its own country now. So Vatican had quite the little journey there.
Yeah, I also looked into the Vatican. Super fascinating. It is the world's smallest country. It's actually 1/8 the size of Central Park, which is tiny, tiny.
Wow.
Have you been there? You must have, right?
Yeah, I've been plenty of times, but I didn't realize it was that small. Or maybe Central Park is just really big. I don't know.
Small.
Probably both.
I mean, it's 0.17 miles. So
no way.
Yeah.
It seems so much bigger than that.
yeah, I mean, it's pretty
Wow.
much just the basilica and the museum.
They have the gardens. They have St. Peter's Square.
Yeah.
It's really big. I whatever.
It's big
not
in,
big
in the
after all.
mind,
It
in the
seems
minds of the
big.
Catholics, I guess. I thought it was interesting that the Pope is a monarch. Maybe that's obvious, but for me, it really was kind of shocking. You basically get elected to this position of being a Pope, but you're also the king of your own country now. The Vatican City State is a true theocratic monarchy. So he has absolute power. He runs the legislative, judicial, and executive branches of the Vatican. Obviously, I knew the Pope led the Catholic Church, but I didn't realize that he controls all of the systems within. I thought he just played a role, and there was also other governing structures. But he appoints all of those governing structures. So it is truly he's the head honcho, he's in charge. So that was pretty shocking to me. The way that the government runs is pretty interesting. So the Holy See, have you heard of this term?
SEA?
SEE.
No.
The Holy See is what governs the Vatican city-state and the worldwide Catholic Church. It is a term that refers to the Pope and his advisors. That is the formal title of the governing body. It is a sovereign entity under international law and can enter into treaties and make agreements with other countries. The difference between the Holy See and then the Vatican city-state itself is just that the Holy See is the governing body and then Vatican city-state is the actual place. This comes into play when you think about how does the Vatican make money. The Holy See makes money through donations and Peter's pence. Do you know what that is?
Is that their money, Peter's pence?
Peter's pence is a term dating back to the 8th century referring to donations received from Catholics worldwide. But I guess the difference between that and a normal donation is the church can do whatever it wants with it. It's a donation to the Pope, and it's not like earmarked for something specific. So
interesting.
I thought you'd be familiar with this. It sounds like something they collect annually from all Catholics.
Oh, I am not aware. Interesting.
Yeah, and then Vatican City generates revenue from museum admissions, tourist stuff, stamp and souvenir sales. They sell some publications. We'll get into this a bit later, but the Vatican has had several financial scandals in the past and is currently running a deficit. So
that seems crazy to me. In my mind, the church is so wealthy. Maybe it's just the illusion of wealth because of how grand and beautiful and old. So it's not like any of this wealth is recent, but it's just the exterior seems so grand.
Yeah.
And they don't pay taxes.
Yeah, tax
They're their
exempt.
own entity. So I'm like, what is this money going to? It seemed like they should be rolling in it.
Well, there's a difference between the deficit and like the annual budget versus how much they have in assets, right? So the Catholic Church has, these are all estimates because it's very mysterious, not very transparent, but it's estimated that the Catholic Church has $73 billion in assets. So that's not all liquid, obviously. Like that includes real estate, the priceless art inside the Vatican that they're never going to sell, all of that.
Honestly, I thought it would be more than that. Like, how do you put a price tag on like the Sistine Chapel? You know?
I mean, I can't even imagine $73 billion, but well, it's interesting because the source of that is, I mean, you touched on this a little. The initial seed money for their assets today was given to them in this Lateran Treaty in 1929 from the Italian government. A little bit more background on that dispute was, as you said, after Constantine the Great constructed St. Peter's Basilica, the Pope was building a lot of influence in that area. He actually was head of his own region called the Papal States, which was a much larger area than the Vatican. It was actually most of Middle Italy. And he ruled that area from 756 to 1870. In 1870, his lands were seized by the newly formed Italian kingdom. And in protest for the next 60 years, the Pope didn't leave the Vatican. He refused to recognize the authority of the Kingdom of Italy, and Pope Pius IX proclaimed himself, quote, prisoner of the Vatican. And he refused to give blessings to the Italians, all of that. This dispute ended in 1929 with the Lateran Treaty, which was signed by Benito Mussolini, who was then the Prime Minister of Italy. That's when Vatican City was declared an independent state, and the Italian government compensated the church $92 million, which would be more than $1 billion in today's money, for the Papal States, so the land and the region that they had taken.
Mussolini giving out reparations?
Yes. Yeah. Shocking. Interesting, right? Who knew? And that's the money that the church used to regrow its coffers. So they invested that money, they invested it in the public markets, real estate, to kind of grow it to what it is today.
Interesting.
Back to the finance challenges that they're facing today, because I also wasn't aware of this. I don't know if more people are, but there's been so many articles about it recently with the recent conclave, because with a, fight for succession, there's also talk of all of these concerns, just like, frankly, any other business. You need to look at the books and understand what you're signing up to take over and be responsible for. Pope Francis, who was the last pope, really came into his role with a mandate to kind of clean up the finances. So I looked into what exactly is happening on an annual budgetary level. And again, not a lot of this information is available, but we do have some estimates. So in 2022, the Vatican was projected to earn $887 million.
Wow.
65% of that came from real estate and investments. Itemized donations, which are the donations that can only be used for a specific cause, constitute 24%. Peter's Pence compromises 6%, and then tourism generated 5%.
That's it?
Yeah. I think this is how rich people stay rich and make money. They essentially don't spend any money because the Bill Gates of the world, they just borrow against their wealth for their annual spending. So I don't know these details if this is true, but I would imagine if you have priceless art, like I know other wealthy individuals, you can use that as collateral. So you can be like, I want a loan of this much. And I don't know if the Vatican is putting up, their art for collateral, but historically, they had a pretty good brand name to be trusted in terms of getting loans. That is changing. So I referenced some scandals earlier. So the Vatican Bank is the organization that manages all of the Vatican's money. And scandals have included murder, bribery, money laundering over many years. It was first plunged into disrepute in the late 1970s after many, many years of rumors of money laundering on behalf of the mafia. And when Pope John Paul I died in 1978, it was in mysterious circumstances, and many conspiracy theories have suggested that it might have had something to do with his desire to clean up the Vatican Bank, and the mafia didn't like it. This money laundering formed the basis for the plot of the third installment of the Godfather trilogy. I did not know that. I have not seen The Godfather. Have you?
I've only seen the first one.
I guess this is what the third movie's about. Yeah, and the people responsible for all this was like late 1970s. They were never prosecuted. And then in 2009, the bank was investigated by authorities over money laundering again, this time worth 180 million euro. Allegations were against the bank president, which led to a police investigation, but charges were never brought. So you gotta wonder, what's happening? Is this just police malfeasance, police incompetence, or is there some bigger conspiracy going on?
I wonder if they can claim religious, how you can get away with a lot of stuff because of religious freedom. I don't know if they have that in Italy, but I wonder if they can be well, you can't look at these documents because they hold religious secrets and it's against my religion for you to look at these documents.
Ooh,
I bet it is really, really hard to conduct an investigation because there is so much secrecy.
Well, the Vatican, it's its own country. It technically doesn't have to adopt the laws of the Italian state. Italy can have a law and then they can decide, the Pope can be no thanks. I don't think that's true here. They do have rules against money laundering and there is a financial watchdog organization, but clearly stuff is still happening. And actually, JP Morgan, the US investment bank, closed one of the Vatican's bank accounts after it failed to provide sufficient info about the sources of $1.8 billion in deposits. So yeah, banks are losing trust in the Vatican. Yeah.
Wait, imagine being fucking JP Morgan and closing down Vatican's account. That is wild. Wild.
Yeah, because they're so much shady stuff's happening.
Oh my God, I wonder if that guy feels like he's gonna go to hell.
Based on the numbers, he's probably a Protestant because he's in America.
True.
Okay, so as you might imagine from the picture I just painted, things are pretty bad. And people are aware. Obviously, there's this reporting about it, right? So one of Pope Francis's mandates when he came into office, is that even the right term? When he was elected, was that he was supposed to clean up all this mess. He was not successful, sadly. Some numbers, again, around how big is the deficit that we're talking here. In 2021, the deficit was stated to have shrunk from 79 million euros in 2019 to 49 million euros.
Okay, progress.
So some progress. I kind of found two different takes in regards to this deficit. There are some Vatican insiders and academics who say that the deficit basically doesn't matter because of the significant amount of reserves that the Vatican possesses. However, this more recent Wall Street Journal article paints a pretty bleak picture in which the journalists there interviewed a lot of Pope Francis's more inner circle and the folks who were trying to clean up the finances at his behest, which painted this picture that Pope Francis was extremely concerned with the deficit and was basically unable to do anything about it, largely because pushback from the bureaucracy of the government. You would think that as a monarch, you would be able to just tell people what to do, but it sounds like it's still quite tough.
Yeah.
Here's a quote from the article. He hired a professional auditor to modernize the finances, leading clergy to move Vatican funds to an account under a cardinal's name and stockpile cash in a shopping bag. The auditor was mystified that nuns kept account ledgers in pencil and paper. At one point, intruders broke into his office and tampered with his computer. I'm
Oh my
picturing
God.
like these elderly church cardinals, nuts,
Yeah.
like breaking into some man's computer and trying to figure out Excel.
That's probably what was happening. That's so cute that they use pen and paper still, though.
It's just so old
That's
fashioned.
so quaint. It's so
Oh my God.
quaint.
So what a nightmare. Poor accountants. Yeah, the police, like the Vatican has its own police force. They even had to get involved in all of this because people were
Oh,
so against change. This shopping bag is hilarious to me.
so funny.
He withdrew $500,000 and put it in a shopping bag
For what? Like, I don't
for
understand.
safekeeping. He like thought the money was gonna go away. He didn't trust the system. So he put it in a shopping bag and then people were like, did he steal the money? Like, what's going on? And they were like, no, we just gotta go ask him to put it back. And he did put it back, but like, insane.
Wait, that's so funny.
Yeah.
What if all the cardinals and the priests and stuff have a little Vatican card, like Vati card? You know how you get like your corporate card at your job, but it's like Vatican bank card.
They're not that advanced for that, I'm sure.
But just imagine it have such a beautiful design, like a little like rosary.
After reading this article, I felt so bad for Pope Francis.
Yeah, wow. I don't know why it's so funny to me to like think of Vatican and Catholicism and stuff as like an entity and a business, which it totally is. Like hearing you talk, like getting audited and shit, it's just, I don't know why it's cracking me up. It's bizarre.
Yeah, well, some people in the church would agree with you and that they'd be like, why are we even worrying about this? Like, our job is to save souls. That's the real work. This is all like stupid.
That's exactly what it is. No, not that that's the job, but I think what makes this so funny is it's such an earthly concern for such a godly entity. It's so earthly and mundane. Like taxes. Not, well, I guess not taxes, but audits,
Yeah.
ledgers and accounting.
Yeah, truly. I mean, what a huge burden to bear as the Pope, where like, not only are you trying to save the souls of all of the, over 1 billion Catholics, but you're also trying to clean up this deficit. Insane. Yeah, I mean, Pope Francis, his mandate was basically to tackle this financial challenge because their pension fund is in trouble. The Vatican's facing up to 1.5 billion euros of liabilities that it's not going to be able to honor. So this is a pressing problem. Pope Francis tried to like pinch pennies. He was like, everybody needs to like spend less. I'm going to cut your salaries. But did not work.
And he did himself. He took the vow of poverty, and didn't he not live in the papal apartment? He like lived somewhere else.
I don't know.
I don't know why I'm asking like it's a question. I can just say it as a statement. Yes, he did. He did not live in the powerful apartments. He lived in like a much more modest area. And I think he didn't use the Pope mobile. There were like certain things that he didn't do.
Oh my gosh.
And he was not buried at Vatican. He was buried as far away from Vatican as you possibly can be.
Oh, all because of he
Yeah.
wanted to be more modest?
Well, the other things are definitely because he took the vow of poverty, but the burial place is up for debate. We don't really know why. Part of it was probably in alignment with his vow of poverty, but people wonder if there was some like other meaning, beef with Vatican itself.
Interesting. I mean, at least he was walking the walk. He's definitely talking the talk.
Yeah, I don't know. I have problems with Pope Francis.
Oh, really?
Personally. I was in Buenos Aires when he was elected Pope, and he's Argentinian. And there were protests for days.
Really?
Yeah, I thought everyone would be really happy, but everyone was pissed off. It's because the Argentinians had this really horrific regime in the 70s and the 80s. They killed a bunch of people, killed a ton of young political dissidents. They would do brutal, brutal things like kidnap people, beat them, drug them, blindfold them, and then drop them from helicopters
Oh my God.
in the city. And so you would just see bodies falling. Yeah, really, really terrible stuff. And Francis was either the bishop or the cardinal at the time, and he was heavily involved with the government. And so they just saw him as corrupt and like complicit in all of this bloodshed that happened. And they were like, this guy can't be Pope. He's corrupt as fuck.
Wow. No, I didn't know any of that.
But, at least he didn't live in the papal apartments.
At least he was humble enough
I don't know.
to not do that, I guess. Oh, damn.
Yeah, no, so I'm always kind of wary, but I don't know. He became beloved after the fact. I think because he was like quite welcoming to the LGBTQ community. I think that was one of the things that people.
My understanding was that he was more progressive. Yeah, he was still anti-abortion, but he was very supportive of gay marriage. But now we have a new pope.
We do have a new pope. Speaking of Francis getting buried, were you following the smokes and all of that during the elections?
No. Mm-mm.
So the conclave is the College of Cardinals. They get together, they vote on lots of different things, but their primary, most important mandate is to elect the Pope. So just to give us a little breakdown of who these cardinals even are, The hierarchy of the church is as follows. First, we have deacons who are priests in training. Then we have priests, and then they can get, I guess, promoted. Is that the right way to say that? I don't know. You get promoted, you get appointed to become bishop. And bishops, they govern over local church dioceses. So groupings of, call it like Kansas City churches, that's called a diocese. The archbishop is a governor of an even larger diocese called the archdiocese. So
Oh my
we can
gosh.
consider that a state level or like a regional level thing. And then archbishops get appointed to cardinal. And cardinal is as high as you can go until you become pope. So the cardinal's primary responsibilities are to vote in all matters of the Vatican, elect the pope, and they're considered kind of like the governors of the archbishops. Again, this is all hierarchical. So the College of Cardinals gets together, picks a new pope. There are currently 138 cardinals, but only 120 are allowed to vote. They have a better system than the US government does because after the age of 80, you are not allowed to vote anymore.
No. But you can be pope till retirement or death, right? So you could have a 90-year-old pope.
Correct. But I don't think they would ever elect somebody who's older than 80.
I see.
And you can't vote if you're
I mean,
older than
80's
80.
pretty old still.
It is pretty old. So this system that we're about to explain was formalized in 1274. And the reason they even formalized it, they used to kind of just wing it before this. There's like a ton of different ways that they were electing pope. And after the death of Pope Clement IV in 1268, it took them 3 years to choose a new pope. So they were like,
Wow.
all right, we got to formalize this process.
Yeah.
So now what happens is the cardinals get together. They literally lock them in a room. Like they turn a key, lock them in a room. And they're like, okay, you guys have to vote and figure it out. And you're not allowed to come out until you have elected a new pope. And then, I'm sorry, I found this so funny. They start giving them lesser and lesser rations of food to make them speed up the process. So it doesn't take too long. Like, this is cruel. So anyway, these poor cardinals are locked in the Sistine Chapel together, getting ever dwindling amounts of food. And they have to write a name on a ballot, and the Pope is elected with a majority 2/3 vote. So it's a supermajority vote. I've always thought it had to be
So did
unanimous,
I.
and that's why it took so
Yeah.
long. But no, it's supermajority. It's
Okay.
2/3. So first they take this oath of secrecy, which is the part where you're not allowed to leave the room. You're not allowed to talk about it. And you are immediately excommunicated if you breach this vow. Very harsh. And so they write these names on the ballots, count them, and then if it's not a supermajority vote, they pour a chemical over the ballots so the smoke burns black, and they puff it up the chimney of the Sistine Chapel and basically tell all of Rome and the rest of the world that no, we have not had a pope yet. They pour a different chemical once the pope was elected, and it billows out white smoke. And that's the big, beautiful moment where you see the white smoke come out. And then within the hour, they'll have did you see the video of the guy coming out announcing that we have a new pope?
No.
Oh my God, you have to watch it. It's so good. It's so good. He's become a meme now because his face he's just like, I have the hottest tea in the world right now, honey. Everyone wants to know what I have to say. He just like comes out with this face. He's like serving face
Oh my
coming out
gosh.
of the Vatican. It's so funny. And he goes, Habemus Papum. Like, we have a pope. And everyone's
Like
like,
Latin.
yes. Yeah, like it's all in Latin. And then they have Pope Bob, Papa Americano, comes out in his still cardinal-clad outfit. He's
Okay.
not in a full palpable gear
Interesting.
yet.
You would think his entry would be like more grand, but
I think he has the ring on. So
Okay.
like there's this fisherman's ring, which is like, I don't know why it's called the fisherman's ring. I should probably have looked that up, but that means that you're the Pope. So he like gets to wear the ring, comes out, says his first address, but it's literally within the hour after they've done the election. So he was just a cardinal at that point. So he's in his cardinal gear. I think he was probably like writing his speech in that hour instead of getting changed. Comes out, makes his address, and then they put him in the full papal gear and he has an actual speech. But yeah,
interesting.
that's our conclave process.
So in the conclave process, if it takes more than one day, do they sleep in that room? They sleep in the Sistine Chapel?
No, they don't. They are allowed to leave in between. They used to sleep in the Sistine Chapel and just kind of throughout Vatican.
Yeah.
But that was considered extremely uncomfortable. So they erected, they
These
made
are old men.
apartments. It wasn't until like the 1900s that they made
Wow.
apartments for the cardinals for this specific reason. But they did, they used to sleep there. Not anymore, though. But one thing I did want to touch on before we get back to modern day Vatican talk is why Bob chose the name Leo the 14th. We can't keep calling him Bob. He is Pope Leo the 14th, not to put disrespect on this poor man's name. So the name that the cardinal chooses is extremely, extremely important. And it usually signals something about how they're going to lead the church. So everyone is speculating, why did he choose Leo the 14th? The official doctrine says it indicates a certain spirit and direction and vision of the new pope. And so let's talk about who the first Leo was. First Pope Leo was Pope in 1440, and he was a very interesting guy. He is famous for convincing Attila the Hun to not attack Rome.
Oh my gosh, impressive. Pour one out for Leo.
So he diplomacied his way out of the Huns sacking Rome. So that was Leo's big claim to fame. And so people think that when a pope chooses the name Leo, they're signaling that they're going to stand up to oppressive forces in the world.
Good time to do that.
Yeah. Our most recent Pope Leo the 13th, he was Pope from 1878 to 1903. And he was famous for writing the Rerum Novarum. This is Latin. I've never taken Latin in my life, so bear with me. I think it's the Rerum Novarum. And that translates to on revolutionary changes or on new things, depending on how you translate it. And this was written to address workers' rights and capitalism during the Industrial Revolution. So it's considered the foundational work for modern Catholic social teachings. And so very obviously, this is a signal that the new pope is going to pick up where that pope left off on social justice issues and reaffirming Catholic social teachings. So I thought it was actually a very nice name that he chose.
So it sounds like he's going to be quite liberal.
He's actually extremely, I don't want to say conservative, but traditional.
What is a Catholic social teaching? Like, is he talking about DEI or what is a social teaching?
Catholics are very, very into helping the poor. Like, that's why I think the vow of poverty thing is so important. The teachings and practice can be a little bit different, but the teaching is that we are all equal. We are all equal under the eyes of God. Treat your neighbor as if your neighbor is God.
Okay.
It's very much about dignity of the poor. Workers' rights are extremely important in Catholic social doctrine. So it's all good stuff. How that translates into what actually happens in the church is a different story, of course, but the teachings themselves are beautiful. So hopefully he actually picks up on that stuff. In terms of him being liberal or conservative, it's honestly up for debate because the Catholic social teachings are actually extremely liberal. But again, that doesn't translate really into how Catholics vote necessarily or how they behave. But he's going to be a very traditional pope. Like, he's going to wear the full garb. He's going to be in the Pope mobile. He's living in the papal apartments, like doing all the stuff that Pope Francis didn't do. So we'll see. We'll see.
Do you have any feelings about this new pope?
I mean, everyone's kind of all over him in a positive way right now. Like, people seem to love him. And what I'm getting are the memes and the positive accolades that he's getting. So I don't think I've really formed my own opinion. I think I'm just being brainwashed by what I'm seeing on the internet. But he seems like a sweet man. I don't know. He wasn't part of like a horrible dictatorship like Pope Francis. So I don't immediately have a negative opinion of him off the bat. I do think it's really cool that he's an American pope, I will say. I think it's funny when he talks in English, he like very clearly has not spent a lot of time in America in the recent decades. Like, he has been living in, I think, Peru.
Oh.
He's been living in South America for a really long time. So like when he was elected, they were saying that the cardinals don't consider him an American. They consider him a South American cardinal.
Interesting.
I know, very interesting.
Is that why they elected him? Because I know people thought there would never be an American pope because of the power.
Correct.
America is already such a powerful country.
Yeah, exactly. So it helped. That is one of the reasons they're saying that he was able to be elected despite the fact of being American, is because within the College of Cardinals, he's considered more of a South American. Yeah. And have you ever heard him speak English?
No.
He has a little bit of an accent. It's funny. Like a foreign accent, not like a Chicago
accent. Do we know
accent.
where he grew up in America?
Chicago.
Oh, Midwest boy.
Yeah, it's funny when you hear his family talk, like his brother's being interviewed a lot. And I was like, yeah, I go over with Bob and we're just in the papal apartments and we had lunch.
Yeah, the Michigander A.
So funny.
Do we know how old Pope Bob is? He's young, right?
In his 60s.
Okay.
Yeah, he's on the younger side.
Yeah. He seems young. So I guess he has quite a long time to have some influence. We'll see what he ends up doing. And that brings us to our next and last question, which is, how much power does the Vatican and the Pope really have in today's world? Obviously, there is a lot of soft power. So the Pope's stances, as we were just talking about, whether he's going to be liberal or conservative, like that definitely affects people's social views and maybe even how they vote. Historically, because there's over 1 billion Catholics in the world, the Pope is kind of the one influencing them, is how it's seen, whether that's true or not. Actually, when JFK was elected to the presidency, he was the first Catholic president, which was a big deal. And voters were very skeptical of him. They questioned if he'd have dual loyalties to both the US and the Pope. That the Pope
so
and his
funny.
Catholic faith would have so much soft power over him that he would actually, potentially have a conflict of interest, which I thought was interesting. I think that perspective is shifting, which we can see literally with the fact that President Biden was also Catholic, but that was rarely a question posed to him. In terms of hard power, so the Pope does have some hard power. He has permanent observer status at the UN, which allows the Holy See to participate in UN activities as a non-member state. This means that the Holy See and the Pope can voice its opinions, make proposals, and contribute to discussions, but it cannot vote in the UN General Assembly decisions. However, that is obviously a very big world stage where you're talking to many countries. The Holy See also sends ambassadors to 183 countries, and these ambassadors have acted as mediators in peace deals. So there have been 3 countries in Africa where papal mediators actually negotiated peace deals. One of these ambassadors was actually assassinated by the rebel group because of his role as a mediator. And then Pope Francis was a mediator between Cuba and America, and that was seen as an example of the church becoming less Eurocentric, since Pope Francis was, I think, the first pope from the New World, quote unquote.
Was he?
I think so, yeah. The Pope also has a lot of access to politicians and world leaders. Even if he isn't formally diplomatically involved, he does weigh in on global politics, war. You never know what's happening in the phone calls behind the scenes. It's kind of like maybe similar to Queen Elizabeth, where like if you get a call from Queen Elizabeth, well, now I guess it's King Charles. I imagine that getting a call from King Charles is probably similar to getting a call from the Pope, where as a leader of your country, you're going to take that call, most likely, even if it's just like a sign of respect. The church also has institutional power in the fact that it has so much wealth, which obviously wealth equals power in many senses. And this wealth has translated into colleges, hospitals, immigrant services, lots of organizations, institutions that exist all over the world run by the church and influencing people, through those methods. So the other thing I looked into was like if you step outside of the Pope himself, but look at powerful groups of Catholics, period. Have you heard of Opus Dei?
I have.
Okay.
I have. Okay, I might be fucking this up, but is that the sort of secret society of monks?
I think that's probably one way to describe it. I heard it more described as a cult, but...
They're in the Da Vinci Code, right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't make that connection until right now, but I think you're right.
Yeah, it's like the evil monk that
Whips
hurts himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's part of Opus Dei.
Got it. Okay, so I came across this in one of the articles I was reading, but there's this guy, Gareth Gore, who wrote a book called Opus that came out in 2024. His perspective is that it's an abusive cult, but he has a whole book on it. It sounds really interesting. Like, I'm probably going to read it. His point was that this group has actually become very influential in conservative politics. Quote, Opus Dei has spent decades seeking to infiltrate the American conservative movement and has poured money and resources into penetrating Washington's corridors of power, actively courting Supreme Court justices, senators, congresspeople, and other power brokers. During the 2 Trump administrations, the group has become more powerful than ever before.
What? Crazy.
Yeah.
I think they have some really weird origins too. That's why they were in Da Vinci Code, because I'm pretty sure the lore of them is that they protect some secret, with Mary Magdalene or something. I don't
know how much of that is real or if that's the Da Vinci Code.
No, it is.
That's real? Okay.
That's real. No, I looked into it. They have some bizarre origin story.
Interesting. I found an interview with Gareth Gore, and the interviewer was like, so is it a cult? And he was like, well, 90% of the members are just normal Catholics who live at home and are normal. And then 10% are this elite core. So I think that elite core is what you're thinking, where they've taken...
Okay, yeah, that's definitely what I'm thinking.
They've taken these vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience to the group, which the obedience, I'm like, okay, ringing some bells with Da Vinci Code. The lives of this elite core, their lives are controlled by hundreds of pages of secretive documents that even the Vatican is not allowed to see. So no one really knows what's in them. But he was saying there's been survivors of Opus Dei, this cult, who've come out and talked about the abuses they suffered, They've talked about a lot of rampant mental illness in this group and like being put on prescription medication as well, which kind of messed with their brains. Yeah. So
That is bizarre.
yeah, I guess Pope Francis was in a standoff with this group and they were like set to vote on some new statutes, but then he died. And so the group put a hold on these votes, hoping that the next pope would be like more friendly towards them. So yeah, who knows?
That's so
It does sound
crazy.
like it's like separate from the Vatican. So I just want to, it's not like the Pope is endorsing this action, but this is a group that definitely exists and, you know, might be doing some background things. Who knows?
Wow. I thought they were like an order of monks only. I didn't realize it was a whole organization where normal Catholics can be in it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. The last thing I want to touch on is just the Catholic Church sexual abuse scandals. I feel like we couldn't really have an episode about the Catholic Church without talking about that.
Fair.
I mean, how informed are you on this topic?
Relatively, I would say. Probably more than the average person.
Yeah. I feel like I saw it all over the news in the early 2000s when the Boston Globe published that expose. I mean, obviously the facts are that there was tons of sexual abuse rampant in the church, tens of thousands of victims, and thousands of perpetrators in the United States alone, which is insane. And then reports from other countries with significant Catholic populations show similar trends. But I was more interested in like how that affects the church's power, since there was this huge scandal in recent memory and it's still ongoing. Like all of the popes since this news came out have apologized for this, but obviously like aren't doing enough. Like there hasn't been enough reforms. There's even recently still reports coming out about sexual abuse still happening. The Pew Research Center did a survey in 2019 trying to understand like how Catholics viewed all of this and if it affected their faith. And it showed that 95% were at least partially aware of the scandals. Another large majority, 80%, believed issues of this kind continued to persist in the church. And 25% said that they reduced their attendance at church because of these scandals, as well as reducing their charitable contributions.
Wow. So it had a huge effect.
Yeah, 25%. So you obviously just said that you're quite familiar. Like, did it affect your view of the church or what was your reaction?
I mean, I'm not a good example because I've always kind of felt like the church was a corrupt entity. It was more like disappointing, but not surprising. I think what did sort of change my viewpoint or like, you know, was most shocking to me was the lengths to which very high up in Vatican authority there were payouts and cover-ups and like everyone knew about it. Like the Pope knew about it. The Pope was covering stuff up. I think that was very surprising to me. I guess when you hear about it, you think it's more on like a regional within the priests or like the bishop is covering something up. But no, it was like as high up as it goes, people were covering stuff up. So I think that was very, very shocking. But I think for a lot of people who thought that, you know, who were like diehard Catholics who thought that the church could do no wrong, it really shook up their worldview.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine you're trusting the church with your child.
Yeah. I mean, the church needs to modernize its celibacy thing. Yeah, and then like the conversion therapy, etc. Unfortunately, there's a lot of internalized homophobia, and there are people who were gay who thought they were going to be damned to hell, so they become priests, and then they like live these horrible, repressed lives, and it's just a whole fucking problem. Like if they could fix all of it by letting women become priests and by letting priests have families and stuff, but I don't think they ever will.
Yeah. I feel like anytime you have just such a large, unquestioned authority in a space that has so much wealth and so much power, and is also on top of it so secretive, there's bound to be like so much abuse hidden, right? Yes, we're talking about sexual abuse here, but also earlier, the financial crimes are serious things too. You would think if you're very devout, you would be following these moral guidelines, which is what the religion is based on. But clearly, obviously that's like naive because people are people at the end of the day and they make their own choices. But I guess you just are able to justify it somehow in your mind. Like you probably have to do some mental gymnastics because I would imagine if you actually are like super religious, you believe in the religion, then you probably think you're going to go to hell if you go against these moral teachings. And clearly people are. I don't know what they're telling themselves in their brains.
Yeah, I wonder if they think since they're priests, they have some sort of out. They donated enough to
they
Peter's
bought
pence
themselves
that they
get out of jail free card maybe.
Yeah, they Peter Punched their way to heaven. I don't know. This is also the same institution that conducted the Inquisition. So
Yeah, we never had high hopes.
not really a good track record there. But when the Pope came out in his papal gear and everything, I was like, he's about to learn some shit. Like, imagine going into the Vatican Library where they actually hold all of the secrets dating back to the beginning of the church. Imagine what's in there. There was this whole special on the news about how the church already knows about UFOs and has been hiding it in the papal library for a long time. There's so many secrets, like historical secrets. That guy has to know so much. This is reminding me again, everyone, Lucy, you, but all of our listeners also need to like watch the meme or the little clip of the guy coming out and he's like, Habemus Papum, when he's like announcing the Pope. You have to just watch his face because that guy also has, just by the look on his face, you can tell that guy has been in the Vatican library and knows all of the tea, all the secrets. I'm like, that is what I would look like too if I knew all of the shit that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, honestly, I feel like I know so much more now after this episode. I had no clue all this stuff.
Yeah, this is a fun little deep dive. And we still don't know what the Holy Ghost is.
No.
That's okay.
It's a mystery.
That's a mystery of faith.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, guys. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye. If you enjoy the pod, we would love for you to give us a follow and rate us on Apple Podcasts, which helps us get the word out and reach new listeners. Our sources are available on Patreon, where if you choose to become a patron, you'll also get access to bonus content, our monthly book club, and our eternal gratitude.
If you'd like to get in touch or suggest a topic for a future episode, email us at everythingiknowaboutpod@gmail.com or DM us across all socials at EikaPod, that's EIKA pod. Thanks for listening and see you next week.